The Nun 2 just released in theaters, which makes 9 Conjuring universe films, so let's put them in a tier list. Alright, so first up on our tier list, we got the first Annabelle movies. I'm just going to go Annabelle movies, Conjuring movies, then the Nun movies, and we're going to go through it like that. But the first Annabelle movie, it didn't really impress me. I watched it for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I already forgot a decent amount of it. I think all the Annabelle movies are really just kind of meh kind of movies. Like, I just didn't care about these characters or the scares, and didn't care about Annabelle like as the doll. She wasn't really that scary if you really compare her to like the first Conjuring movies where you just took a one little shot at her, and she was more scary in that movie than she was in the little Annabelle movies. But I will say the first half of the first Annabelle movie actually is pretty decent, and it builds up some pretty good scares, and I do like our two main characters, but that second half just fell apart for me. I thought it was really boring, just dug into some horror tropes that I just don't care about, and the scares were just not great. But the first half did keep it from being terrible, but still the first Annabelle I think is a bad Conjuring universe movie. Next up though is Annabelle Creation. This is actually one that actually stands pretty good on its own. I think this one works a lot in many different ways, but I don't think it is great. I think the whole cast though is amazing. I think the director of Shazam did this movie, which is pretty surprising, but I think he did a really good job at directing this. I love the setting that it's in, kind of just like this one house area. A lot of orphan girls in here. They all did pretty great. And I think the girl from Shazam is also in this movie. She plays Mary. I think she was great in here. I love the scares in this movie. I thought they actually worked a lot, especially when some of them became possessed. I think that was cool. There was one big shocking moment in the first 5 minutes of this movie that I'm not going to talk about, but that was pretty shocking to me. But I think this one worked a decent bit. I wasn't really anticipating this to be good, so maybe that's why I liked it more than the others. But Annabelle Creation, if I was going to put it in the ranking, I would put it in the bottom tier of good. We're going to keep it in the good tier for now. Next up is Annabelle Comes Home. This is like the Annabelle movies kind of worked in a weird way, how the first one was kind of a prequel. Annabelle Creation was a prequel to Annabelle, so that's like the first Annabelle movie. And Annabelle Comes Home kind of takes place after the first Conjuring movie, I'm pretty sure. I don't know, but Ed and Lorraine Warren are in it, and this one really focuses around Ed and Lorraine Warren's kid and kind of taking care of the house while they're gone, and she brings over her two friends and stuff like that, her babysitter, and they just get into a lot of trouble when one of the friends kind of like unlocks all the magical stuff in their house, all the bad things, and stuff goes crazy. And let me just tell you, this movie is kind of like batshit crazy. There's a lot that happens here. Some stuff I really forget about, but I do like some of the character moments in the first half, and I do like all of our actresses and actors in this movie. I think they did great. I do like the set design of it all just being taking place in Ed and Lorraine Warren's house, which is a great house. I really like the house a lot. I think it works a lot. But yeah, still, I think this one falls into like the horror tropes of I don't care when you get to that second act, and I wish Ed and Lorraine Warren were in it more. So Annabelle Comes Home, I would put that one in the okay tier. The Annabelle kind of story kind of really leaps in different directions. It gets good, gets bad, and then it's okay. Next up, we got the Conjuring films. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3. Okay, the first Conjuring. I feel like the first Conjuring surprised the heck out of me. Like, I was not expecting that movie to be so good, because I didn't watch it when it first came out. I don't know how old I was, pretty young, but I did watch it for the first time like 2 years ago, I think, when I just started getting into more films, getting into more horror films, because I used to be very scared of horror movies. Like, I never used to go to them, always used to cover my eyes when the trailers came up in theaters. But I've come around to it, and now I'm not very scared of them too much. But the first Conjuring actually has a lot of scares in here that work a lot. They're pretty inventive, and I really do think this movie is awesome. And I think Ed and Lorraine Warren are just some very great characters to have around, and that makes the Conjuring movies so special compared to all the other movies in this universe, because Ed and Lorraine Warren are very vital to this universe, and they really kind of carry it on their backs in so many moments. But I will say the family in this movie actually works a lot, and I loved how the house just was so scary, and when you just stepped into it, you could feel how scary it was. The tree in the backyard, one of the scariest moments in the film. So yeah, the first Conjuring, I would say it's a great horror movie. I'm one step away from moving it to amazing, like a one rewatch away. I think it just holds up really well. That brings us to The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring 2, I think, is one that is a step down from the first Conjuring, but not in too big of a way. This one does feature the nun, and it features some of the scariest parts of the nun that you could get. The Nun is scarier in a Conjuring movie than she is in her own films, which is kind of interesting. I think this one also works a lot. I feel like the location, though, of this movie makes it a little weaker than the first one, and there's not as many people in this one as there was in the first one, so there's not as many scares that you could go with in this one. But still, I feel like this one's scares actually work, and I feel like some of the parts are actually scarier than the first one, but overall, there's not as many scary moments in here as there were in the first one. But still, if I were to rank these, I still would put it in the great tier. I feel like it's a great one. Next up is the third Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. I always forget that title because it's so kind of confusing. They should have just called it The Conjuring 3. This one did come out after COVID, I think 2021. So not a lot of people saw it. I saw it on HBO Max because it was still a horror wuss when this one came out. And you know, this one is actually not bad. I thought this one was going to be a step down because it's a different director. This director also did The Nun 2. So he's kind of getting into more Conjuring universe films. And I thought this one was going to be bad, but we had some new players in this movie. But those first 15 minutes are some of the most legendary Conjuring stuff that you can get. Like the body transformation stuff was actually pretty excellent. I loved the first 15 minutes. Some of it, though, goes off the rails in this movie. Like, it gets to be a little too much in that third act, and I'm going like, what's going on in here? What are we doing? We could have just been a little more simple in this movie. But I will say that first half was so good, kind of like a mystery. There's some courtroom drama in here, and I really did like our two new actors in this movie. I do forget their names, but they're a couple in this movie. Really did like them a lot. Ed and Lorraine Warren are kind of suffering in this movie because Ed is kind of like dealing with heart attacks and all that, so you really care about them a little bit more. But I will say this one gets a little too convoluted in that second half, but I still would put it in the good tier because I think it's a great addition. Next up is The Curse of La Llorona. I guess that's how you say it. I first watched this one like 4 days ago, and guess what? I already forgot all about this movie. Yeah, this one is a lot of nothing and a lot of this one feels the most unconnected to the Conjuring universe, and it doesn't feel like a Conjuring movie at all. Like, you know how the Annabelle movies and the Nun movies kind of like feel like a Conjuring movie that could take place in that universe. The Curse of La Llorona doesn't feel like a Conjuring movie, and it kind of feels like a student film at so many parts, and the story is just so lackluster, and you don't care about what's going on. You don't care about this Curse of La Llorona lady at all. I thought it was very boring. This is probably the most boring Conjuring movie that you can get, and I just didn't care. You know, I wish I cared, but at the same time, it felt so long, and I think it was only like an hour 30, an hour 40. Some of these movies just really feel a little longer than they should, but this one was just horrible, terrible. Going in the terrible tier, the only Conjuring movie that I really hate so deep down. Now we got the Nun movies. Let's go Nun 1, Nun 2. The first Nun movie, as I said in my Nun review, go check it out. I think this one isn't really great. It's very boring at parts. I kind of really just see myself zoning out while watching it, and that's because I don't care for the characters in this one. I don't think the direction or the script made me care for the characters of Sister Irene and Frenchie, but by the end you really see them as characters that you do care about just a little bit, so I think that works a little bit well. But I think the scares in here just don't work. I feel like there's too much just standing around waiting for the scare to happen. Like, if the scare happened a little faster, I think it would have worked, but there's a lot of just moments where it's silence and then you know a scare is coming, so it's not really a surprising scare to me. And the Nun, as I said, the Nun is scarier in The Conjuring 2 than she is in her own movie, which is The Nun. I will say I like the set pieces a decent bit, but at the same time, the script is really weak. This movie is so boring. Its pacing is really slow. So I would put The Nun in the bad tier. That moves us to The Nun 2, the latest movie in the Conjuring franchise. Just hit theaters. Check out my review on the channel. This one, I will say, works a little bit better than the first Nun, and I will say it's scarier than the first Nun because some of the moments are actually pretty surprising. The editing is actually very fast, which I did appreciate, and I appreciated that they actually made me care for our characters much more in this one. I actually cared for Sister Irene, actually cared for Frenchie, which is, they say, Maurice in this one, so he has kind of like two different names. Cared for his character when he's at the boarding school, kind of getting possessed. There's a lot of bad things that happen with him, but I will say this one falls under where the Nun 2 falls under, which is the first half is really boring, not a lot happening, but that second half really kicks it into like ninth gear. You get a lot of horror moments, get a lot of scary moments, a lot of crazy moments, especially in that third act when Sister Irene is fighting the Nun, and the Nun gets to go do some cool things, possess some cool things in this movie. So I will say the Nun 2 had a lot of great moments at the end, but the first half kind of drags it down. but I will put it in the okay tier. So if I were to rank the Conjuring movies, terrible tier would be The Curse of La Llorona. Simply just a horrible movie, doesn't feel like the Conjuring universe. The bad tier, I will keep Annabelle 1 at that first position in the bad tier, because I think the first half is very strong in that one. The okay tier, I will actually move the Nun 2 at the first position, because I think that last act of the movie is very fun. You get a lot of great moments in here, and it makes you care about Sister Irene and the other characters a decent bit. The good tier, I'm going to move The Conjuring, Devil Made Me Do It, to the first tier, because I do love Ed and Lorraine Warren. They're some of the best characters in this universe, and they make it as special as it is. And they make it the universe. They really make these movies what they are. You know, some great horror movies. Annabelle Creation, though, I think it has a lot of great moments, and I think it's a pretty good film, but it's lower for me. And the great tier, I will leave it like that. I think The Conjuring is the best movie in the Conjuring universe, started it all, but I think The Conjuring 2 is not far behind. I think it's a great horror film, it has a lot of great horror moments. I just wish, you know, it had a bigger set and it had a bigger cast, just like The Conjuring 1, because I think that's what made that one more fun, you know. So that's my Conjuring ranking so far. Kind of like the most interesting franchise I think you could get. It has a lot of highs, had a lot of lows, has a lot in the middle. There's like, it's not really like a high franchise for me, but it's just a really fun franchise to dig back into, because all the movies are pretty short and you could just turn them on at any time. You don't really have to pay attention too much. So, you know, I have a lot of fun with these ones. Leave your ranking down below for the Conjuring franchise. Make sure you leave a like on this video. Helps a lot. Subscribe to the channel. I upload almost every day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.